Hello everybody and welcome to the Ozone. Today we are beginning the audiobook for Five Nights at Freddy's Fazbear Fright number 5. 5 already? Bunny Call. So this came out today and I am so excited to read it. No idea what it's going to be about. We're going to read the first story today. Yeah. You're going to see my reaction, of course. I have never read this before. So I'm going to be reacting to it with you, and yeah, we're going to see what a massive lore reveals are going to be in this one. Anyway, let's begin. Bunny Call. As you can see, we got three again. Bunny Call in the Flesh. That's a good title. And the Man in Room 1280 or 1280. I don't know. 1280. The Man in Room 1280. That's the one I'm most excited about, and I think everybody else is the same. Anyway, here we are, Bunny Call. This one's about Bob. Don't know much about it, but we'll just get straight into it. The sun erupted from behind low-hanging grey clouds and nearly blinded Bob. He squinted, glowed, and flipped down the visor as he slowed to manoeuvre his anemic minivan around the millionth sharp curve on this seemingly endless winding road carving its way through thickly forested mountains. That's just great, Bob thought. The only thing he'd been looking forward to about this trip was the predicted rainy weather. His family was bummed about it, but he was secretly gleeful. Rain meant the flurry of activities would be cancelled and he'd be left in peace to do a little fishing, take naps, and read a book. "Honey, look at that," Bob's wife, Wanda, sang out. "Sun? Oh, is that what that is?" She playfully smacked his shoulder. "Hand me my sunglasses," Bob said. Bob took his eyes from the road for a couple seconds and watched Wanda lean forward to dig the sunglasses out of the glove box. He admired her shiny auburn curls and the soft contours of her profile. Wanda was petite, pale, and freckled, with small features. Even after 12 years of marriage and 3 kids, she was still the pretty, perky cheerleader he'd fallen for when they were seniors in high school. The only noticeable difference was her clothes, having traded her pom-poms and pleated skirts for the latest fashion. Today, she was wearing high-waist short black shorts and a nettled lavender top over her black tank. The top fell off one shoulder. It looked great. Eyes back on the road, Bob put on the sunglasses. Then he took a couple of seconds to check himself out in the rearview mirror. A couple seconds was all it took to confirm that he didn't look like the jock he'd been in high school. Gone were the long, thick black hair, the sharp jawline, the mischievous dark brown eyes, and the wide, carefree grin. In their place were thinning, greying short hair, soft jowls, tired eyes, and lips clammed into a downward curve. Most of his muscles had gone wherever too much of his hair had gone. He didn't have enough time to work out, and it showed. Bob quickly shifted his attention to the drive. He pulled the minivan into the right lane as the road started climbing upward, and the 2 lanes turned into 3, creating a passing line. 2 sporty sedans pulled out from behind Bob to zip right by. I swear sedans are mentioned in every story. What is it with sedans? Bob sighed. "I miss my MG." Wanda glanced at him, but wouldn't take the bait. She never did. She'd talked him into selling his beloved MG when they had their second child. He'd regretted it ever since. He missed everything about that car, even its smell, the distinct motor oil or leather seat smell that always made him feel manly and young. Bob shook his head and tried not to inhale the scents of the minivan, peanut butter, dirty socks, and grape juice. "Guess what, everyone?" Wanda called out. "What?" the kids chorused. "They've changed the forecast." Wanda did a happy little dance in her seat as she looked at her phone screen. Bob was surprised the phone still had service. It felt like they were thousands of miles from civilization. "Instead of 80% chance of steady rain," Wanda said, "it now says 20%. We're gonna have sun. Happy sun, smiling sun, some cat out to play." Bob's 3-year-old daughter Cindy began singing off key. Bright sun, friendly sun, it's a beautiful day. Wanda joined in with Cindy. Cindy giggled and started in on the grating melody again. Her curly auburn pigtails bounced as she bopped through the song. What Cindy lacked in singing talent, she made up for in cuteness and enthusiasm. Freckles and a happy grin won over everyone who met her. Come on, let's all sing, Wanda called out. 7-year-old Aaron sat next to Cindy. In the car seat he was excited to be growing out of soon. He shared his sister's freckles and auburn hair as well as their energy, and predictably joined in singing. Tyler, 10, lanky and dark with broad shoulders that telegraphed the athletic build he'd have soon, lounged in his own space in the third row of seats. Tyler liked to set himself apart because he was the oldest, but he was still young enough to be wanted included into the family fun. He still loved game night, movie night, Sunday picnics and sing-alongs. Now, he did this part by providing a beatbox backup. A happy sun, smiling sun, sun come out to play. Bob's family sang. Come on, Bob, Wanda cajoled. Sing, I've never seen that word. Bob grunted, then ground his teeth while his family went through the 2 lines at least half a dozen times. Give me some classic rock, and I'd belt out with the best of them, Bob thought. But he wasn't going to sing out about the stinking sun. Bob kept his lips pressed together and his eyes on the road, where the still wet pavement was glistening in the newly shining sun. The double yellow line was a tether, pulling the minivan inexorably towards its destination. Bob might be driving, but he had no control. Not really. When was the last time he'd had control? Before Tyler was born? When he and Wanda married? Before they met? Since he was born? Was control an illusion? Finally, the song wound down, and Aaron asked the age-old question. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Cindy parroted. How much further? Are we there yet? Wanda asked Bob. Not you too, Bob said with a sigh. Wanda laughed. She looked at the map she had unfolded, and answered her own question. 27 more miles, she said. Bob found it endearing how Wanda insisted map reading was more fun than using a GPS. It was one of the many quirks he loved about her. Making up songs like the 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮, that's really hard to say, 𝓑𝓮𝓶𝓮, was one of the many quirks he wasn't so crazy about. Harping continually on family togetherness was one of the quirks he truly hated. When Tyler had been young, it wasn't so bad. Taking his son on fishing trips and to ball games was no trouble at all. Even the hikes Wanda had planned were fun. When Aaron was born, the family activities had gotten more complicated, but they had still been doable. Adding Cindy to the mix had raised the chaos factor tenfold. Cindy wasn't a brat or anything, she was actually a very sweet child, but her energy level was through the roof, and for some reason, all that did was amp up the boys. Lately, it seemed like Bob had never got any peace or quiet, even at night. He could be sure that one or more of his kids would end up diving into bed with Wanda and him at some point, every night, without fail. Where Bob used to have time to himself, now his time belonged to everyone except him. His work took a slice, his kids took a slice, Wanda took a slice. He never used to begrudge the time Wanda took, but that was because she wanted his time for fun things. Now all she wanted was for him to put on one of his many family man hats. Coach, teacher, playmate, cook, handyman, driver, shopper, janitor, money earner. A couple months before, Wanda's best friend had told Wanda about Camp 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮 is a Native American name that means rich, Wanda read from the nearly magazine-thick brochure describing the place. We named our family inclusive Camp 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮 because a man who has family is indeed rich. She kept reading. Isn't that beautiful, Bob? He said absently. Bob had thought Wanda was just reading about the place the same way she read about Greenland and Norway and Albania. Wanda wanted to travel, and she loved to research destinations, but it turned out Wanda was serious about Camp 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮. I keep saying 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓸𝓶𝓮. Why don't we just send the kids to camp, and we can stay home and hang out in the hammock? Bob asked while Wanda was talking about it. He grabbed her and nuzzled her neck. Just the two of us. Ew. Wanda wasn't buying it. Neither did she approve of this idea that if they go to a nice hotel and plop the kids by the pool so they could have an alone... Oh my god, I'm really bad at reading this today. Neither did she approve of his idea that they go to a nice hotel and plop the kids by the pool so they could have time alone together. He finally pulled out all of the stops and suggested a high-priced resort that promised to entertain the kids while the parents lounged under big umbrellas on white sandy beaches. Bob wanted to relax. Wanda wanted something else. So here he was, on his way to Camp 𝓑𝓮𝓫𝓮. Bob glanced in his rearview mirror to find out why it was suddenly so noisy in the minivan. Now all three of his kids were engaged in some elaborate hand-clapping game. Oh no. Wanda leaned toward Bob. Zoe? Is that Zoe? Okay, Zoe and I used to love camp when we were little girls, she told them for the 10th time. The only downside was that he had to be away from Mama and Daddy. Isn't it awesome? We don't have to put the kids through that. We'll be all together for a full week. Awesome. If Wanda noticed his sarcasm, she ignored it. A deer ran across the road in front of the minivan and Bob hit the brakes. Thankfully, the minivan hadn't been going very fast. It couldn't. It had no pick-me-up for steep grades, especially at high altitudes. Even though he easily missed the deer, Bob felt his blood pressure go up. "Can you keep it down?" Bob bellowed at his kids. "I'm trying to drive up here." Momentary silence. "Do you think there are any fairies in there, Daddy?" Cindy asked him. She was staring out the side window at the dense forest crowding at the side of the road. "Why not?" Bob said. Wanda had told him over and over that Cindy was extra sensitive. He could never burst her bubble. If she wanted to believe there were fairies, it was his job to go along with it. Wanda changed the subject. "So what are we going to do when we get there?" she asked the kids. Bob groaned. Not this again. All three of them started shouting at once. "Big bubbles, talent show, karaoke, scavenger hunt, puppets, paint rocks, trampoline, dancing, hula hooping, gymnastics." Cindy called out. "Trampoline, archery, horseback riding, canoeing." I'm taking so much time going through this. "Tubing, mountain biking, hiking," Aaron shouted. "Agility, kayaking, diving, sailing, swimming, tug of war, running, ping pong, volleyball, bungee jumping, zip lining," Tyler yelled. Wanda laughed delightedly. She did this on purpose to spin up the kids. Bob was tempted to cover his ears with both hands, but obviously he couldn't do that and drive. And what about fishing, he thought. Bob loved to fish. Wanda hated it, but Wanda could manipulate with the best of them when she needed to. She'd used Bob's love of fishing against him when she was talking him into this trip. When it became clear Bob was going to Camp 𝓑𝓑𝓮𝓫𝓮 whenever he liked it or not, Bob had comforted himself with the idea that he could wander off and fish on his own. He could wander off? That's when the truth came out. Well, you won't get to just go off by yourself, Wanda admitted. They have fishing tournaments, and maybe you can talk the boys into entering one with you. Why did everything have to be so organised? The kids kept firing out activities. Bob figured they'd have to stay for about 5 years to do everything the kids wanted to do. And they were only staying for a week. Only. Yeah, right. 7 days was an eternity. 7 days of fun and frolic, Wanda kept saying to him while she was getting everyone ready for the trip. She made it sound like it was supposed to be a good thing. How is Bob going to survive it? Okay, I see where this is going. I believe in the description it said that Bob was going to go against his family or something. But this seems very interesting. Camp 𝓑𝓑𝓮𝓫𝓮, Bob had to admit, was a great looking place. Or it would have been if it wasn't infested with noisy families. Oh no, that is the worst. Nestled in a narrow valley between two tall, wooded mountain ranges topped with craggy rock, Camp 𝓑𝓑𝓮𝓫𝓮 hugged the edges of a massive, meandering, deep blue freshwater lake, Lake 𝓑𝓮𝓪𝓿𝓮. Lake 𝓑𝓑𝓪𝓿𝓮. Is it just me today, or is it these actual words being hard to say? Lake 𝓑𝓑𝓪𝓿𝓮. I'm going to say Lake 𝓑𝓑𝓪𝓿𝓮. According to the camp brochure, Amity was Cherokee for forest water. That would have been an appropriate name for a lake in the woods, except for the fact that the camp was nowhere near Cherokee territory. Why is so many of these words hard to say? When Bob pointed out that to Wanda, she didn't seem to care. Accessed via a 10-mile dirt and gravel road that left the highway at the bottom of a steep grade, Camp Etenia didn't announce itself until you were almost upon it. Then an understated rustic sign, nearly hidden behind a maple tree, reassured tired travellers they were in the right place. Camp Etenia just ahead. The camp itself was as picturesque as its surroundings. The main lodge was a huge log cabin, flanked by 2 stone chimneys and an ample porch that ran along the front and sides of the building. The structure was covered with a shiny green metal roof. The camp's 35 cabins looked like the lodge's children. Little log and stone buildings were scattered near the main lodge, like baby ducks swimming around their mum. Bob and his family were slated to be in the cabin 17. Cabin Nutter. Nutter, apparently, was an Algonquin name meaning strong. Don't care anymore. I'll say it however I want to say it. Bob's boys thought that Nutter was a hilarious name. We're going to stay in a nut house. Tyler had told all his friends when they got on their assignment. Don't mess with my Nutter, Aaron kept saying. Will it have lots of peanuts in it, Daddy? Cindy had asked several times. Wanda said, we'll get nutty. Bob responded, I'm going nuts. Oh my god, I hate this family so much already. I'm on Bob's side. He thought the name was idiotic because, again, the tribe lived nowhere near here either. The owners of Camp Etenia seemed to have reached into a swirling vortex of Native American names and randomly picked a few. Camp Etenia's parking lot was a shady, tree-guarded gravel rectangle behind the main lodge. Ooh, okay. When Bob pulled the minivan into the lot, he was reminded that you couldn't drive your car to the cabin. That would ruin the ambience, Wanda said when Bob complained about it. Is excruciating back pain from lugging all of our crap also part of the ambience? Bob said. Wanda smiled at him and applied fresh lip gloss. Well, I guess that answers that question, Bob thought. Now that he stood here next to a minivan crammed with luggage and toys, not to mention a cargo carrier stuffed with more of the same, Bob's back started throbbing just at the idea of getting everything to the cabin. And of course, Cabin Nutter was the furthest one from the parking lot. It's right at the edge of the woods, Bob. Wanda had gushed from when the cabin was assigned to them. Oh, joy and bliss, Bob said. And here they were. One woman's heaven was another man's hell. Bob looked up at the traitorous sky, which had traded its clouds for vast expanses of pale blue. The sun was almost directly overhead, and it shined down with oh my god. Why can't I say that word? Ferocity. Yeah, it shined down. Why can't I say? I swear I can say that word. I don't know. Ferocity. No, I don't know. I think it's just me today. I'm not very good today at this. Bob figured it was at least 80 degrees and the air felt heavy and muggy. Their feet crunching over the gravel, Wanda and the kids were practically dancing around the car. Cindy was spinning in circles, Aaron was doing some kind of dance, and Tyler was drumming on the minivan's hood. Wanda was calling out, "Hi," and "How are you?" to everyone within earshot. "Look, Utterfly," Cindy squealed. What is it, Pokemon? Bob followed the direction of Cindy's plump, pointed finger and saw a monarch butterfly disappear into the clump of salmonberry bushes. He flashed back to his childhood, remembering when his dad took him camping and they picked salmon berries to go with their fried fresh trout dinner. "Come on, Dad," Aaron said. "We have to get signed up or we'll miss out on all the good stuff." "Bob, why don't you go take care of all that?" Wanda handed Bob 4 sheets of paper covered with lists. He knew the list were the activities each child had chosen and the ones Wanda had decided they'd do as a family. He sighed. It's going to take all afternoon to do this. The kids and I will go scope things out and start meeting people, Wanda said. When you're done with the sign-up, you can bring stuff to the cabin. Oh, I can? Goody, Bob muttered. What's that, honey? Nothing. Bob watched his family scamper off, but he didn't move. He wished he could just go get in the car and drive away. He looked at the driver's seat. What would happen if he did that? The sweet scents of wild flowers, warred with pungent exhaust smells, but overpowering both, the powerful aromas of juniper and pine commanded attention. They made Bob think of gin and tonic, his favourite drink. I hate gin so much. It tastes like an evergreen tree. That's because tonic is... yeah, anyway. Wanda had said the first time he made her one. After that, she started calling gin and tonic that tree drink, and eventually she shortened it to a tree. Make me a tree. Wanda would say occasionally after the kids were asleep on Friday nights. He could use a tree about now. Suddenly he got shoved from behind. A kid yelled, "Sorry," as Bob staggered into the side of his minivan. Clutching the open second row door, he noticed an overweight, sweating, middle-aged man wrestle with multiple duffel bags and suitcases. The man met Bob's eye, and Bob gave him a sympathetic smile. Then Bob shut the minivan's doors and looked around. He was immediately sorry that he did. Taking in the camp from behind the driver's seat and watching his family spill from the minivan with uncontained enthusiasm had been bad enough. Seeing the whole of his purgatory in one wide angle was practically unbearable. Kids ran all over, like they'd be giving a drug that rendered them senseless, but kept them in perpetual motion. Men were morphing into pack mules. Sweating dads staggered around under the weight of their burdens. Mums were socializing and organizing. In the midst of the chaos, camp counselors blew whistles and shouted incomprehensible instructions. Bob tried to decipher what they were saying, but he couldn't. Stealing himself, he approached a ponytailed, blonde, blue-eyed counselor. She blew her whistle when he was just 4 feet away from her. The high-pitched screech catapulted into his ears and zigzagged around his brain for several seconds before he could speak. "Excuse me," he said, "but which way to sign up for activities?" Ridiculously, she blew the whistle again, but this time it was at least a short burst, and she pointed to a shallow flight of stairs on one end of the lodge. "Go up those stairs and follow the walkway to the front porch. Get in the line and it will lead you to the sign-up tables inside." She blew the whistle again. Bob's fingers itched to pull the whistle off her neck, but he contained himself. "Thanks," he said through a murderous smile. Bob went up the stairs and found the line on the lodge's front porch. From here he could see that his family was already settling in. Cindy was holding hands with another girl, this one with black braids and spinning around on a big dock that stretched over the lake. What was it with little kids and spinning? Near Cindy, Wanda was talking to a woman whilst Bob's boys and another boy took turns trying to skip rocks across the surface of the lake. And here he was, standing in line so he could take care of paperwork. Story of his life. Bob lost track of how long he waited. Files droned around his head, and he felt his nose starting to burn. That would teach him to ignore Wanda's advice to put on sunscreen. "It's going to rain," he told her confidently. "You never know," she'd said. It was amazing how often she did know what he didn't know. Someplace nearby, someone played a guitar. Someplace even nearer, someone ate beef jerky. Bob wrinkled his nose. The smell made his stomach roil. Other parents were chatting in line, but Bob kept his head down. For the first time since he'd pulled the minivan out of his driveway, he was able to think about the proposal he wished he was home working on. He didn't have time to take a week's vacation, and if he did, he sure didn't want to take it running himself, ragged doing activities with a bunch of strangers. Honestly, he needed to be alone. Bob turned to watch his family again. Cindy and her new friend were now playing a makeshift game of hopscotch between the lawn and the lake, while the boys were trying to balance on the pilings along the edge of the dock. He was sure he was going to hear a splash pretty soon. Bob finally reached the doorway of the lodge. Hard to believe, but it would eventually be his turn. Curious in spite of himself, he looked around the lodge's interior. It was just as the brochure depicted. Exposed log walls, Lots of big heavy wood furniture padded with cushions covered in vaguely Native American patterns. A massive buck's head presided over the fireplace, and the chandeliers hanging from the log roof were made of antlers. This was not the best place to be a deer. Bob took one last peek at his family before he stepped completely into the building. As expected, the boys fell into the lake. Cindy continued to play hopscotch. Wanda laughed at her sons, only because they were laughing too. If anyone had asked Bob if he loved his family, he would have answered a vehement yes, because he did. But that didn't mean he liked them all the time. Relatable. And lately, he'd been liking them less and less. They always wanted something. "Daddy, look at the picture I drew," Cindy would say. "Daddy, can you throw the ball to me?" Aaron would ask. "Dad, can you please help me with my school project?" Tyler would beg. "Honey, the garage door is rattling. Please fix that," Wanda would order. Yeah, order. She always said please, but it felt no less like an order than it did when the boss said, "Get that done today, please." Bob was tired of all the requests, all the obligations. He needed to breathe. "It's your turn, dude." Someone tapped Bob on the shoulder. He looked around. A young dad, who obviously still loved fatherhood, stood behind Bob. The dad grinned and pointed over Bob's shoulder. "You up?" At the table in front of Bob, a hefty, tanned woman with super short, dirty blonde hair and smile lines around her eyes looked up at him. "Hi, I'm Marjorie." She gave him a big smile, and he admired her very white, even teeth, while he pointed to the white plastic name pinned to her green Camp Atenia shirt. "Welcome to Camp Atenia." "Oh, is that where I am?" He was aiming for dry humour, but apparently he missed the mark. Marjorie's smile faltered. She frowned for a second and then said, "Name, Mackenzie." The woman tapped the keys on a wireless laptop. "Bob, Wanda, Cindy, Aaron and Tyler." "That's right." "Okay, let's get you signed up. Have you prepared your list of activities?" Bob handed the woman Wanda's neat lists. The camp offered 112 activities and asked that campers come prepared with lists of at least 20, ordered by preference. Wanda's list held 72 activities altogether. Bob wondered what Marjorie would do with that. But she didn't seem surprised at all. "Perfect," Marjorie said as she began typing. Bob watched her, his jaw clenched. One of the objections he had to Camp Atenia, in fact to any summer camp, was the rigidity of the whole thing. He had no issues with being outdoors or doing fun things, but doing things on a schedule, following a list, that drove him nuts. Maybe he did belong in Cabin Nutter. Seriously though, didn't he get enough schedules and lists to follow at work? At least at work he was getting paid. Why did he have to be subjected to do this crap at home too? Marjorie stopped typing. "I wasn't able to get you every activity listed, but I managed the top 20 for each of your children and for your family as a whole. Awesome juice." Bob enjoyed using one of Tyler's favourite sayings. Tyler actually meant it when he said it. But for Bob, awesome juice meant either "that sucks" or "I couldn't care less." Marjorie handed Bob's list back to him, then looked both ways and behind her before leaning forward. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Bob heard, "Do you want?" but the rest was incomprehensible. "Oh." He leaned forward. "I'm sorry." He leaned forward. "I'm sorry." Marjorie leaned forward too. Her breath smelled like chocolate. Ew. "Do you want to sign up for a bunny call?" "Oh," she asked. "That's so suspicious." He must have misheard her. Bob asked, "What's that?" Marjorie turned and pointed toward a tall rabbit standing in the far corner of the massive room, under an antique canoe hanging from the vaulted ceiling. The rabbit, which had bright orange fur, wore a white and black-chested vest, a yellow and white polka dot bow tie, and a black top hat, through which its floppy ears stuck straight up. The rabbit held symbols, like old-fashioned wind-up monkeys used to have, like the one from Toy Story 3. Bob blinked. How had he missed the rabbit when he first looked around? It was like missing an anaconda in a pen full of puppies. The rabbit did not belong. It really did not belong. Bob was mesmerised by the rabbit for several seconds. He couldn't tell if the rabbit was a person wearing a costume or one of those creepy animatronic things he'd seen in a couple of restaurants his family had visited in when he was young. Probably that. In any case, it wasn't the kind of rabbit that made you want to cuddle up to it. Its eyes were a little too big to be friendly. They bordered on a crazed. "Mr. Mackenzie? Bob?" Bob blinked. "Huh?" Marjorie grinned at him and winked. "When you sign up for a bunny called the rabbit over there, his name is Ralpho. We'll visit your cabin." Bob looked back at the rabbit. "Ralpho. He'll come into your cabin screaming, clashing cymbals and spinning on its head." Oh god. Oh god, this is actually going to be scary. Marjorie chuckled. "It's really something terrifying to behold." Bob could just imagine it. "It's quite the wake-up call," Marjorie added. Bob didn't get it. Wake-up call? Oh right, I didn't say. Ralpho makes his rounds between 5 AM and 6 AM. During that hour, he'll visit every cabin that signs up for a bunny call. It's a bit of a naughty prank we play on the children on their first day here. Most of them love to have that rush of terror when they're scared silly first thing in the morning. Oh no, he's going to scare his children! No! Marjorie chuckled again. In her low voice, the sound was reminiscent of a villain's devilish laugh. "Are you interested?" Bob looked from Marjorie to Ralpho and back again. He thought about his annoyingly happy family and their insistence that he spend his only week off this summer in his poorly disguised detention centre for overworked dads. He thought about how long he'd stood in this stupid line signing up for all the 𝓵 activities. He thought about all the luggage he still had to schlep to Cabin Nutter. Then he thought about how his family reacted to loud noises in the morning. That thought began teasing some of his good humour to the surface. "Sure," he grinned. "This is going to be a riot." "Wonderful," Marjorie said. She tapped her keyboard again. "There, all signed up." She smiled at him, and he smiled back. It was Bob's first genuine smile of the day. It was the first moment since this trip had been scheduled that he felt something other than resentment and annoyance. He even felt a little delighted.